Government, like private sector, can no longer be satisfied with the status quo. Last year, we took the bold step of changing leadership. Many questioned that, but we took it and we felt it was necessary. It was focused on the promising future, and we know it won't come on its own. The state of the county, of course, would not be complete without a few words about growth management, as you know, as exciting as it is. Much like the Cougars football, it's not really so much as we lose, is that we always seem to run out of time. And that simply happens year after year. We just completed our third review of the 94 plan. Except for a little bit in Richfield and La Center, there's no land, very little land added for housing. And if we lose in court for the rural industrial land, at present, there will be very little land for new jobs.
The third project is exploration of a third crossing corridor for the Columbia River to ensure Clark County has adequate transportation infrastructure on I-5 and I-205 to continue our healthy growth and expansion.
So our current jail facility is overcrowded, it's outdated, and it no longer serves the needs of our community. The jail was designed in the 1970s. It was built in the 1980s at a time when the county's population was much lower, and at a time which jail design was largely based on jail practices from the 50s and 60s. Sheriff Adkins addressed the council recently in our work session discussing the needs of the jail, and I just want to read a brief portion of your remarks because it really hit it on the nail for me. Sheriff Adkins, we're now nearing the 2020s and much has changed. It's no longer acceptable to house inmates in overcrowded jails. It's no longer acceptable to provide minimal medical facilities. It is no longer acceptable to have inmates sleep on the floor or to house them in extreme prolonged solitary confinement. It's no longer acceptable to house people with serious mental health issues in a county jail which lacks the proper infrastructure needed to prevent causing them further harm.
For the 12-month period ending November 1st, 2017, the county assisted more than 6,500 people experiencing homelessness. I believe that how we deal with homelessness is a measure of who we are as a community. New regulations also allow for cottage housing in unincorporated areas. Now, for those of you that are thinking cottage housing with 7 little dwarfs and a nice young lady doing all the cleaning, it's not what it is. Cottage housing is a way to use land more efficiently. It's a group of small, single-family detached houses around a common area with a coherent plan to develop the site. These homes can be as small as 150 square feet or as large as 1,600 square feet. I'm excited that the county is providing more housing options, more diversity of housing options, and more housing stock for our residents.
Anyone who's crossed I-5 or I-205 bridge knows that congestion is a problem here. But tolls are not a definitive answer. I'm particularly concerned with Oregon's proposal to impose value pricing tolls on many of the metro area's freeways. Last fall, I was invited by the Oregon Transportation Commission to serve as a member of the Portland Metro Area Value Pricing Advisory Committee. I'm actually one of 3. Mayor McInerney-Ogle serves on that committee, as well as a delegate from the Washington State Department of Transportation. There are 25 members, however, so only 3 voices from this side of the river. This committee was formed as a result of the Oregon legislature passing a bill directing $100 million per year into transportation projects across the state of Oregon. This bill includes a direction to pursue tolls on I-5 and I-205 between the Washington state line and as far south as where I-205 and I-5 meet in Tualatin, just south of Tualatin. While Oregon has said that the goal is to ease congestion in the I-5 and the I-205 corridors, there's a significant concern whether tolls will actually achieve that goal. The Oregon legislation directs the Oregon Transportation Commission to develop a proposal for pricing tolls and then seek approval from the Federal Highway Administration for the value pricing plan no later than December 31st of this year. If the federal government approves this plan, Oregon is required to impose it. Value pricing is a system of tolls in which the amount of the toll is dependent upon the time of the day and the amount of congestion on the road. The highest tolls are thus on the commuting hours, the times of the day when people have the least flexibility about when to travel. My concern, both as a resident of Clark County and as a member of this committee, is that Southwest Washington residents should not need to bear the burden of improving transportation in a state where we don't live, but where many of our residents work and pay taxes. My understanding is that value pricing really will only work when motorists have optional routes or where they can modify their travel times. Drivers from Clark County going to work in Oregon have no other option to get to Oregon other than I-5 and I-205 bridges, with no diversion options until we're fairly far south of the Columbia River. And they have few options for travel time due to their work schedules. My goal of the Value Pricing Committee is to be a voice of reason and to protect the interests of Clark County residents. I hope Oregon will join Washington for the bi-state discussion about improvements for the I-5 corridor and how we can make improvements with a financing plan that is fair and equitable for Clark County residents.